Erev Tov Rabotai, we are continuing with our Mishna Yomi, Masechet Chagigah. We are up to Perek Gimel Mishnah Hey. Today's Mishnayot should be Le'elu Nishmat Neria ben Svetlana Aranbayev Neliyahu ben Burcha Israelov Menuchatam Began Eden Amen. And Le'avdi ben Chaim L'Chaim V'Refuah Shelemav Daniel Shalom ben Rosa B'Tor Shach U'Le'Yisrael. This Mishnah presents another instance in which the law of Tirumah is more stringent than that of Kodesh. Min amodiit v'lifnim, if Amei Haaretz offer utensils for sale in the area extending from the town of Modi'it and inward toward Yerushalayim. Now the commentators explain Modi'it was a city 15 mil from Yerushalayim, and the expression from Modi'it and inward refers to the 15 mil area between Modi'it and Yerushalayim. The expression from Modi'it and onward refers to anywhere beyond the city of Modi'it. And they claim that the utensils are ta'ol, ne'emanian al-kidcheres. They are trusted about small earthenware utensils such as pots, cups, and jars if the utensils are for use with kodesh. Although the utensils of an Am Haaretz are generally considered tameh by rabbinic decree, the sages made an exception for small earthenware utensils sold between Modi'it and Yerushalayim for the following reason. In Yerushalayim, the site of the temple, small earthenware pots were in great demand because they were used for cooking the meat of offerings and for baking flour offerings. All earthenware had to be brought in from elsewhere, however, because the pottery furnaces needed to produce it were banned from the city due to their heavy smoke, which would have darkened the walls of Yerushalayim and spoiled its beauty, as Rashi explains in page 25b, Masechet Chagigah. Had the sages insisted on their rule that utensils of Am Haaretz are tameh, then utensils sold by Am Haaretz would have been unusable for Kodesh, because there is no way to purify earthenware utensils that are tameh. Therefore, only pots made by chavrim would have been usable for cooking the meat of offerings or baking meal offerings, but there were too few chavrim in Yerushalayim who were potters to meet the demand. Since the sages, as a rule, do not issue decrees with which most people cannot follow, they felt it was necessary to permit the purchase of pots from Am Haaretz so that everyone who brought an offering could find a pot in which to cook it. They therefore declared that Am Haaretz in the area in Yerushalayim, between Yerushalayim and Modit, are trusted to vouch for the Torah of their small earthenware pots and cups, relying in this case on the biblical law that pots of Am Haaretz potters are presumed tahol. Now, Am Haaretz are not trusted about metal pots, however, which can be purified through immersion and mikveh. Since maintaining Am Haaretz Tumah would have not decreased the supply of tahol metal pots, since tameh metal pots can easily be purified in a mikveh, the sages insisted on their rule the utensils of Am Haaretz are tameh with regard to metal pots in and near Yerushalayim. Now the Mishnah gives permission to purchase small earthenware pots from the Haaretz between Modi'it and Yerushalayim and does not extend the permission a similar distance from Yerushalayim in all directions. Since Modi'it was a center for pottery, the sages granted permission within this area only. And the trustworthiness of Am Haaretz regarding large earthenware utensils such as wine barrels will be discussed at the end of the next Mishnah. Mina Modit v'lachutz, when they are selling utensils from Modit and outward, meaning farther away from Yerushalayim than Modit, and Ne'emanin, they are not trusted to vouch for the status of any utensils. The stringency of Tirumah over Kodesh is then that Am Haaretz between Modit and Yerushalayim are not trusted about small utensils such as pots being purchased for Tirumah, but they are trusted about those being purchased for Kodesh. Now the sages trusted Am Haaretz near Yerushalayim about small utensils used for Kodesh to ensure that there would be always enough pots in Yerushalayim for cooking Kodesh. Since such pots had to be discarded once they were used because they absorbed taste particles from the meat, which became forbidden as notar left over after a day or two, there was an increased demand for such pots, and since there were too few chaverim who were potters to meet the demand, the sages trusted Am Haaretz for Kodesh and permitted their pots to be used for cooking sacrificial meat. On the other hand, since pots in which Tirumah was cooked were reusable because Tirumah does not become notar, people could accumulate such pots over a period of time, making shortages of pots used for Tirumah is less likely, and therefore the sages maintained their decree against trusting Am Haaretz with regard to Tirumah, even though they made an exception for Kodesh. And the Mishnah clarifies its ruling in regard to Kodesh. Ketzad, how is this so? Under what conditions is an Am Haaretz between Modit and Yerushalayim trusted about pots sold for use with Kodesh? Hakadar shu mocher kterot nichnas lifnim min Modi'it. If a potter who was selling pots brought them outside of Modi'it and then came into the area from Modit inward with them, hu hakadar ven hakterot ven halokchim ne'eman. He is believed about their status as long as there are three conditions met. Number one, the seller is the potter who brought them in, and he did not receive them from some other Am Haaretz who brought them in. Now the sages trusted the potters inward of Modit out of necessity, but they trusted only the one who actually brought the pots in. If the Ma'aretz left them with another Ma'aretz who was inward of Modi'it to sell for him, the seller is not trusted about the Tara of the pots. 2, these pots being sold are the pots he brought, and not others that he added to those that he brought in, meaning he is trusted only about those pots that he brought with him. If he is selling other pots that he acquired in Modi'it, he is not trusted about the Tara of those pots. And 3, that these are the buyers who saw him bring them. Even when he is vouching for the Tara of the pots that he actually brought himself, a Chaver buying the pot can trust him only if he saw this potter actually bring the pots. Others cannot take the seller's word that they are Tahol. Therefore, the Mishnah says, Yatsa, once he has left Modi'it, heading farther away from Yerushalayim, however, he is not trusted about the status of the pots that he is offering for sale. The potter left Modi'it, heading away from Yerushalayim, leaving the area in which he is trusted. And that is the end of Mishnah Hey. Mishnah Vav continues, having taught that potters are trusted in certain situations and not in others. The Mishnah proceeds to discuss the trustworthiness of tax collectors and thieves, who are likewise trusted only in certain situations. If tax collectors entered the house of a chaver and seized some of his utensils to pay a tax debt, now utensils an Amaretz owns or touches are considered tameh by rabbinic decree. Therefore, if Jewish tax collectors who are Amaretz touched any utensils besides the ones they took, those utensils would have become tameh. As long as the tax collectors state, however, that they touched only what they took and nothing else, they are believed, and everything else now remains tahol. And likewise, if thieves returned the earthenware utensils they stole to their rightful owners, they are trusted to say, we did not touch any utensils in the house other than the ones we took in the case of the tax collectors, or we did not touch the inside of the earthenware utensils we stole in the case of thieves, and the utensils are therefore tahol. Like we explained in Mishnah 1, earthenware becomes tameh only when the tumah enters the inside of the utensil, but not when a tameh person or thing touches it from the outside. Now, since thieves are trusted to state that they did not touch the inside of the earthenware utensils, even the earthenware they stole is still considered tahol, even though they obviously touched it out. It's outside when they stole it. Now, thieves are believed only when they return the earthenware out of a sincere desire for repentance, since a sincere Baal Tshuva would not lie. If they return out of fear of being caught, we do not believe their statements about the tara of the utensils. And tax collectors are trusted only in cases where we do not know that they entered except they said so. Since they are the ones who created the problem, we believe them. As the Gemara says, the mouth that prohibited is the mouth that permitted. Since they are the ones that created the problem, we believe what they say. Now, this Mishnah now returns to the topic of the previous one. There we learned that Amaretz are trusted for Kodesh about the Tarab, small earthenware utensils from Modit and inward toward Yerushalayim. The Mishnah now lists another leniency that applies in Yerushalayim itself. In this too, there is a distinction between Kodesh and Tirumah. Ubirushalayim ne'emanin ala Kodesh, and in Yerushalayim proper, Amaretz are trusted about the Tarab, even large earthenware utensils that are used for Kodesh, which were essential for the sacrificial services, but they are not trusted about utensils used for Tirumah. According to both our Mishnah and the previous one, the sages trusted Amaretz about the Tarab, the utensil or earthenware utensils for Kodesh, to ensure an adequate supply of utensils for the sacrificial service. Since the two Mishnayot deal with utensils of different sizes, however, the sages extended different levels of trust. Our Mishnah deals with large utensils such as barrels of wine, which were generally used only by the temple officials and not by individuals. Therefore, the sages trusted the Amaretz in Yerushalayim proper for large barrels, confident this would increase the wine barrel supply enough to prevent shortages. The previous Mishnah, however, dealt with smaller than utensils, which were used as wine containers by every individual who brought wine to be poured as a nesach, a wine libation on the altar, or for general Kodesh use. If only Amaretz and Yerushalayim proper were trusted about such containers, this would have not increased the supply enough to meet the demand. To avoid severe shortages of these essential containers, the sages trusted Amaretz within the entire 15 mil area between Yerushalayim and Modi'it. And during the festival of Pesach, Shavuot, or Sukkot, they are trusted even about utensils used for Tirumah. For everyone has the status of a chaver during a festival. Since Amaretz purified themselves in preparation for Pesach, Shavuot, and Sukkot, the sages suspended Amaretz Tumah throughout these festivals. Now, although this law is rabbinic in nature, there is an allusion to it in Shoftim chapter 20, verse 11, describing the gathering of 11 tribes in one city. The pasuk says, "And all the men of Israel gathered to the city like one man, chaverim, comrades." In referring to the assembly as chaverim, the verse alludes to the rabbinic law that all Jewish people, including Amaretz, have the status of chaverim on festivals when most of the Jewish people are gathered in Yerushalayim. And that is the Rabotai of today's Mishna Yomi. Baruch Adonai Leolam. Amen v'amen.